When my manager handed me the performance improvement plan, she smiled and said it was just a formality to help me grow. But 3 weeks later, I found the original document on the shared drive. The creation date was 3 months before my first so-called performance issue. They'd already written my termination letter. I just hadn't been fired yet.
I'd been a senior systems analyst at Meridian Financial for 5 years. 5 years of exceeding every metric, mentoring new hires and volunteering for projects nobody else wanted. My personnel file was spotless. I'd actually received the company's Excellence Award twice. In an industry with high turnover, I was the guy they pointed to during recruitment events. So when Karen Whitmore transferred in as our new department director 8 months ago, I wasn't worried. I'd survived 4 managers before her. I knew how to adapt. Karen was ambitious, mid-40s, sharp suits, sharper smile. She came from a competitor and made it clear from day one that she was going to optimize the team. Within her first month, she'd reorganized our entire workflow and brought in 2 analysts from her previous company, Derek and Simone. They were fine, technically competent, but they had this look in their eyes whenever Karen spoke, like devotees. I noticed small things first. My name disappeared from meeting invites. Projects I'd been leading for months suddenly had Derek's name on them. When I asked Karen about it, she tilted her head like a confused puppy. "Oh, I just thought you seemed overwhelmed. I'm trying to help you." I wasn't overwhelmed, I was excelling. But I documented everything, kept my head down, and kept delivering results. Then came the feedback session. Karen called me into her office on a Thursday afternoon. HR was already there. A young guy named Marcus who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Karen slid a document across the desk. "This is a performance improvement plan," she said, still smiling. "I want to be transparent with you, James. There have been some concerns about your communication style and your ability to collaborate with the new team members." I stared at the document. My hands were steady, but my mind was racing. What concerns? From who? "Several team members have expressed discomfort with your approach. You can be intimidating." "Which team members?" "I can't disclose that. It's confidential." The PIP outlined 3 main issues: poor communication, failure to collaborate, and resistance to change. Each one was vague, supported by exactly 0 specific examples. The improvement period was 60 days, and the goals were written in corporate speak so ambiguous they could mean anything. I asked Marcus if I could review this with my own documentation of my performance. He nodded slowly but said nothing. Karen's smile never wavered. "This is just a tool for growth, James. I believe in you." I signed the acknowledgment, not an admission of guilt, just confirmation I'd received it. I went back to my desk and started building my case. Over the next 3 weeks, I documented everything obsessively. Every email, every completed project, every positive interaction. I requested copies of my previous performance reviews from HR. All 5 years showed ratings of exceeds expectations or higher, multiple commendations, 0 disciplinary issues. I also noticed something strange. Every task Karen assigned me during the PIP period had impossible parameters. She'd give me projects with deadlines that required 60-hour weeks, then critique me for poor work-life balance. She'd ask me to collaborate with Derek, then schedule our meetings at times she knew I had client calls. When I'd reschedule, she'd note that I was avoiding collaboration. It was a trap. Every single piece of the PIP was designed to be unfailable. The breakthrough came on a Wednesday night. I was working late, again, trying to finish a report Karen had assigned at 4 p.m. with a 9 a.m. deadline. I needed a template file from our department's shared drive. As I was searching, I found a folder I'd never noticed before. It was nested 3 levels deep, labeled KW Admin. Inside were dozens of documents, meeting notes, budget proposals, and then a subfolder called Personnel Transitions. My stomach dropped. There were 3 documents with my name on them. The first was my PIP, dated 3 months before Karen had ever mentioned any performance concerns, 3 months before the complaints that supposedly triggered it. The second was a draft termination letter, also predated, and the third was an email chain between Karen and Derek discussing how to build the case against me so they could bring in their own person for my role. Derek had a friend, someone Karen had already interviewed. They'd planned this before she ever met me. I sat there in the dark office, the glow of my monitor illuminating documents that proved everything I'd suspected. This wasn't about my performance. This was about clearing a seat for someone else. The PIP wasn't a tool for improvement, it was a paper trail for a predetermined termination. I took screenshots, I forwarded copies to my personal email, I downloaded everything. Then I called a lawyer.
All right, I need to stop here for a second, because at this moment, I'm sitting in my car in the parking garage at 11 p.m., evidence on my phone that my manager planned my firing before I ever did anything wrong. Tell me, what would you do? Subscribe if you think I should have walked in the next morning and confronted her right there. Drop a comment if you would have played the long game like I did, because what happened over the next 2 weeks, it still makes my blood boil.
My lawyer, Patricia Chen, specialized in employment law. When I showed her the documents, she went very quiet for a very long time. "This is textbook premeditated termination," she finally said. "They created a paper trail to justify a firing they'd already decided on. The PIP is just theater." She explained my options. I could confront Karen directly and probably get fired within the week. I could go to HR, but since Marcus was in the room when Karen presented the fraudulent PIP, he was likely complicit, or at least compromised. Or I could gather more evidence and build an airtight case. I chose option 3. For the next 2 weeks, I was the perfect employee. I met every impossible deadline, I documented every interaction with timestamps and witnesses, I requested everything in writing. Karen seemed confused by my sudden compliance, but she adjusted quickly, making the targets even more unreasonable. She assigned me to train Simone on a system I'd built from scratch. Simone took detailed notes, very detailed. I realized she was documenting everything too, but for Karen. Meanwhile, Patricia was busy. She filed a formal records request with HR, demanding all documentation related to my performance dating back 3 years. She also requested the metadata on my PIP document, the actual creation date, modification history, and author information. That's when Karen made her first mistake. 3 days before my 60-day PIP period ended, she called me into her office for a progress check. Derek was there, so was Marcus from HR. Karen's smile was different this time, tighter. She knew the ending was coming. "James, I'm sorry to say that despite our efforts to support you, you haven't met the improvement goals outlined in your plan." I said nothing. "We're going to have to terminate your employment, effective immediately." I pulled out my phone and hit record. "Before we proceed, I'd like to clarify something. You're terminating me for failure to meet the goals in the PIP dated March 15th, correct?" Karen nodded. "That's correct. And this PIP was created in response to performance concerns that arose in early March." "Yes." "Interesting, because the document metadata shows it was created on December 3rd of last year, 3 months before any alleged performance issues, 3 months before you even conducted your first team assessment." The room went silent. Marcus's face drained of color. Derek suddenly found the carpet fascinating. Karen's smile finally cracked. "I don't know what you're talking about. That document was created in March. I have screenshots of the original file properties. I have the email chain between you and Derek discussing how to build a case against me so you could hire Derek's friend. I have everything, Karen." She stood up. "This meeting is over. Security will escort you out." "Actually," I said, "I think we should bring in your supervisor and legal, because what you've done isn't just unethical, it's potentially actionable. My attorney has already filed a complaint with the EEOC." Karen's face went white. The next 4 hours were chaos. Meridian's VP of Operations was called in, then the Chief Legal Officer, then an external HR consultant they kept on retainer for exactly these situations. I presented everything: the predated documents, the email chain, the pattern of impossible assignments designed to manufacture failure, the metadata that proved Karen and Derek had orchestrated my termination before I'd ever underperformed. The Chief Legal Officer asked Karen one question: "Did you create this PIP before March 15th? Karen hesitated for 1 second too long. "I may have started drafting some preliminary notes." "Did Derek's friend apply for James's position before this PIP was issued?" Another hesitation. "I don't recall the exact—" "We have the application date. It was December 10th.
Karen was escorted out that same day, not by security, by the chief legal officer personally. Derek resigned before they could fire him. Marcus was transferred to a different division pending an internal investigation. I didn't just keep my job. Meridian offered me a settlement to avoid litigation, a substantial one, plus 18 months of severance if I chose to leave, or a guaranteed position with a new manager if I chose to stay. They also agreed to implement mandatory documentation training for all managers and quarterly audits of PIP processes. I took the severance, not because I was running away, but because I'd already interviewed with 3 other companies during those 2 weeks of evidence gathering. One of them offered me a director position, more money, better culture, and a CEO who'd actually read my story in an industry newsletter and said, "We need someone who documents like you do." I started there last month. Last I heard, Karen landed at a small consulting firm. Derek never got hired anywhere in our industry. Turns out, word travels fast when you're part of a documented termination scheme. And Meridian's HR department got completely restructured. The PIP was supposed to be my execution. Instead, it became Karen's.
Thank you so much for sticking with me through this one. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next video. And if you've ever been put on a PIP that felt like a setup, or if you've got your own workplace nightmare you need to get off your chest, send your story to us. Your experience might be the next video. Until then, trust your instincts, document everything, and remember, the paper trail works both ways.